Well, here I am with Alan Watson. Alan, it's an honour to have you here today, and thank you for giving up your time. I know you're extremely busy. You are, without a doubt, and I can say this, I'm sure that you are one of the busiest professional magicians in the world. We'll talk about how many shows you do a year later on, and the types of shows that you perform. But you know, I grew up as a youngster in New Zealand with magic, and you were my mentor when it came to business and marketing. And I honestly believe that I wouldn't have got where I am today, wouldn't have achieved it without your help. And pretty much what we're going to talk about today is what you've taught me over so many years, and thank you for sharing it with everybody. This is going to be a real treat for both. I think amateurs, semi-professionals, professionals will get a lot out of this DVD. So thank you, Alan. And with that said, Alan, let's talk about your 7 points, or your 7 secrets, actually.
7 secrets
to success.
Okay. Well, the first one I'd like to share with you, Paul, as you well know, is to find out who you really are.
Right, yeah.
And the only way you can find out who you really are is to perform, and to perform regularly. Now, if you're starting off, the best way is to perform charity shows, because then you have the opportunity to make mistakes, and mistakes are opportunities to grow.
Right, yeah. I want to ask you this, because charity work is how I think, I agree, is the best way, and that's how I started. And we could talk about this later on, because there's a lot of stuff from the charity work that you can gain, not just the performance, but I'm sure that there can be publicity and all sorts of things.
That's right.
So we'll talk about that, because it all ties in. But I think, now, do you still do charity work now, or are you a bit more choosy? You don't need it. I know you don't need it because you're so well established.
Well, but I support the Variety Club.
Yeah.
Because at the moment I have nearly everyone at me
charity
work, and I'd rather do something really properly.
Well, my question is, what point do you stop doing the majority of charity work? Once you've established yourself, or
once you've found out who you are, and you have a fairly good professional act.
Right. Okay. So you use the charity work to well, that's how you get your shows, right? So you establish yourself, you use that, and that's a great idea. And I think finding out who you are, now your hook, I know when you go overseas, because I get this all the time, people say, oh, do you know the Kiwi magician? And that's you, with a close-up act.
Well, I remember in the 80s, Bill Larson asked me to come to the Magic Castle to perform.
Right.
Now, I looked at it, and I thought, by God, you've got some of the world's best magicians there, technically and entertaining.
Yeah.
And what I want to do is I want to be different. So I looked at my unique point of difference. My unique point of difference was I was a Kiwi. So I adapted all my whole routine to a Kiwi story. Yeah. Like the chop cup, like kiwi fruit. Sure,
and actually at the end, on this DVD, we're going to include some footage of you performing, and you'll see, I like your gypsy thread with the Maori theme, which is New Zealand Maori natives, Aborigines rather. And I think you also do the chop cup in that.
That's right.
That's a TV show. You do that, and that's all New Zealand theme. So that was your hook.
Well, it made me stand out
than everyone else, right? Yeah. And also, I would imagine that would get you a lot of work within the tourism industry.
It does, all the time.
And I'm sure, did you ever look for sponsors with that show? I'm sure that's.
Oh yes, I did. Well, when I worked at the castle, I had 3 major sponsors. I didn't just get paid by the Magic Castle. I got paid by the Kiwi Fruit Marketing Board.
Right.
They flew all my fruit across, plus I got paid.
Yeah.
Team New Zealand, which is the America's Cup, and Nobilo Wines, and they flew all my wine across as well. So didn't get paid once, I got paid 4 times.
4 times, wow. Well, that's part of the marketing and part of your business. I also want to ask you this, because you are successful with your marketing and your publicity and so on. What is your, now I know your background to magic and all your awards. If I were to read your list of awards and achievements within magic, that would take the entire DVD. What I would like to know is a little bit about your background into marketing, because isn't that your background is actually marketing?
Originally, well, I was managing a shop when I was 19, and I wanted to become a professional magician, but I didn't have the skills and abilities, especially with marketing. So I went wrecking. I took a big drop in income,
right,
and my company put me through many marketing courses, publicity courses, the sales and marketing, and that's how I learned the skills and abilities in that area.
So, well, actually, that's what we're coming to. That's going to be, I think, it's one of your points coming out later on, is marketing and business and so on. So the first point, let's get back to this, is to find the real you.
Yes.
Because Alan, maybe you can tell the story about how I went through every phase when I was performing. You know, I went through my David Copperfield phase. You saw it all when I was growing up as a teenager and so on within magic in New Zealand, until I found out the real me, which is what you were trying to tell me for years, right? I know Alan kept, well, you tell because you kept telling me the same thing.
Well, I remember, you're a born mimic, and that's why you do Charlie Chaplin so well. You get the facial expressions, and I remember you saying to me, I want to get on cruise ships. How do I get on cruise ships? And they were auditioning, I think it was 97, they're going to choose 3.
That's right.
And I said, well, what's your unique point of difference? And you were thinking for a while, and I said, you've got a Bachelor of Music.
Yeah.
Do a Victor Borman.
Yeah.
With the piano. And apparently that's what...
Well, that's it. I did the audition. I think there were 3 of us that got through. And it's funny because you were right. Because and it's the same with your Kiwi act. You put it in a room of magicians, and well, this audition, in fact, there were a lot of other magicians, and they were doing the same sort of thing. But it was the uniqueness because we found out the talents we already had, or who we were. In your case, you're a Kiwi, so you used that. Mine was my music and my Charlie Chaplin act, and it stood out from everyone else. So that makes, I think, if you can find out who you are, that makes you successful, rather than trying to be someone else, right?
I agree. Well, that's what actually happened. I didn't know at the Magic Castle, J. R. Baker Stewart was in the audience. I didn't even know he was the president for the Dragon Awards. That's what actually won us the Dragon Awards.
Was the
Kiwi
and
theme.
because it was so unique.
Yeah.
And you knew, I mean, I'm sure you knew years ago, you found out, you developed who you were. Is there a technique to find out? Because I'm trying to think if I know a technique, but it took me practice, I guess, and I guess it comes back to what you said about doing charity shows. You have to do all that work. You have to work to find out who you are, right?
You have to pay your dues.
Yeah. And I guess that includes doing every type of show, right? I mean, from children's parties to, you take everything on when you start, right?
Well, most people start with children's shows, but you can maybe work in a restaurant doing close-up magic, and that'll take you into the corporate side, into the trade show side. The children's will take you into like doing shopping malls, theme parks, major shows.
And it doesn't happen overnight, does it?
No, success takes time.
Yeah. So the first point is find out the real you.
Find out who you really are.
Yeah. That's a great point.
It's not the magic, it's you.
And that's the key. I think of a classic example. I think of Paul Daniels, the English TV, and a friend of yours. I know Paul's a good friend of yours.
He's a superstar of magic.
He's a superstar of magic, and it's his personality, isn't it?
That's right. He can take very simplistic things and make them miracles.
See, my idea now is when talking to young magicians, because I get the chance on the ships and things to meet a lot of young magicians, and I try to encourage them, and I'm going to sell them your DVD because it'll stop me having to maybe use the DVD. But is to look at successful magicians like yourself, or the people at the top of their game, and rather than copy them, find out what makes them successful.
Great. Use them as a benchmark.
Right.
Analyse why they are successful. What are they doing different to the ones who aren't so successful?
Yeah. Point number 1.